What's happening, friendlies and non-friendlies? How's everybody doing? Messing around with a little bit of Stellar Blade because I'm a little excited about the new game that was announced. So we're gonna just chalk it up, mess around a little bit. So Stellar Blade 2 was announced a while ago, but they revealed the first trailer for it at the Summer Games Fest show. And we got a new protagonist, Evie instead of Eve. And instead of having a sword, she has gauntlets where she punches and kicks. And it's pretty hype because not a lot of games do that. The only game that I can recall that does punches, or at least the last one that I played that's an action game that there's those punches and kicks, is only on the PS2. And that game is pretty dope. If you haven't played that, check it out. It's a very difficult game. And also, they kind of flubbed the PS2 release of it. Not optimized, frame drops, it's not optimized. So but it is a very cool game and it's very difficult. And it is also based on Ghost in the Shell. So, kind of staying in the, the same realm of existence with that one. Yeah, Oni is really cool. But let's talk about Stellar Blade 2. I believe the CEO said Eve has stances in the new game. They mentioned stances, they mentioned multiple weapons, or they said weapons plural, and they also mentioned fighting styles, plural on each one. Now that could just be translation miscues. Whatever the case, that's what we have to go off of right now, so might as well just live off the hype, surf the wave of the hype. Stances. What does stances even mean? We won't know, obviously, until we find out, until they reveal this information to us, which who knows when that's going to be. But the way I see it, the way I view it, is no different than what we already have, right? It's just combos, and we have like a combo branch, right? So we have a combo branch with square, we have a combo branch with triangle, or rather light and then heavy. These are two separate combo branches, right? Technically, you might say that these are two different stances because they have different attacks that you can do out of them. Do triangle, 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 square. Technically, that would count as a stance. But let's presume that they're using stance in the more legitimate sense, in which case that would be something more like the gun, for instance. The gun would technically be more of a legitimate stance than what we just talked about, right? The gun is a separate standalone thing that can only be done when you are in gun stance. However, there's only one thing you can do with the gun. That's just pull the trigger, right? Just pull the trigger. That, while that would count as a stance, it's not a very, very well-versed or interesting stance. So what we are potentially dealing with here is going into stance. If they are doing it the way that I hope that they're doing it, it's Eve hitting a stance, and then she has several different options to take it from. Presumably, you would have all 4 face buttons that can perform a different action, right? That's my hope for it. You have a stance you can go into, and then you have 4 different branches that you can take it in. Now, that would be my ideal for what a stance would mean in this game. If they did have it like that, that would mean that there are potentially four different stances that you could take. And then with each one, an additional 4 paths that you can take from each one of those stances. I think it's pretty interesting, right? And the fact that they showed off like her doing like a sweep. She did a parry into like a low sweep, which she doesn't have a sweep in this game. I think that's like the lowest he can get in this game. It's something like that. That brings up another ordeal. If they have stances in the way that we just talked about, where you just hit a button and then you have 4 different stances you can go into, and then from each one of those stances you have an additional 4 different options that you could take from it, that would deal with one of the main issues I had in this game, which is that there are a lot of cool attacks that are locked inside the combos. And you can't really get to some of these attacks because a lot of these combos just aren't good. This one especially is like one of the weakest combos in the game. And it looks the coolest. So, you know, it just kind of sucks that the coolest looking move is also one of the most useless looking moves. If they implement stances in the way that I am speculating, then that will mean that these attacks, instead of them being locked behind these long-winded combos, these long dialed up combos, that would mean we would instead have shortcuts to access some of these moves. So instead of having to do triangle, square, hold square into triangle, maybe I could just go into stance and then hit a button and get that attack, or get whichever one of those attacks that I want to come out, right? Press a different combination of buttons, go into a different stance, and I might be able to get the other version of the attack that I want that is somewhere in that combo, right? So that's what stances potentially allows for in the new game. Potentially, if it works the way that, you know, I hope it works, you know, if it works in that way. Obviously, we're just shooting the breeze at the moment. Yeah, that was one thing that they brought up. Interested to find out what stances mean. What do they mean by Eve having stances in the game? They also mentioned weapons. So obviously she's going to have her sword. Evie, my bad, I was saying Eve the whole time. Evie is going to have her sword. They said that she won't get it right away, but eventually she will unlock it. And that will be another way to fight. They also mentioned that they mentioned something else. They mentioned that you won't have to use anything but close range combat to beat the game. What else that implies, I don't know, but it at least implies that they're trying to offer more freedom. So there's going to be no more of those instant kills, at least. Or maybe you have to deal with the instant kills in a different manner. Yeah, I think that's a dope change. I don't know if they mentioned this, but I definitely noticed that there's more environmental play. They showed multiple times where Eve was able to knock somebody. Evie was able to punch somebody or kick somebody and knock them back into a wall or into a railing. Eve is not able to do that in this game. Right. Technically, that is a knockback, but in a knockdown form. In the new game, Evie, when she knocks them back, they stay standing so that they collide with the wall. There's a wall splat, causing them to stagger, which means you have a chance to get additional hits. In this game, that doesn't exist. There's no collision with the walls. There's no interaction, no animation. There's just invisible walls, and it's just kind of awkward when you get to the wall. But in the new game, there's collision and there's wall splats, meaning chances to get some cool combos and combo extensions, and the game might be a lot different. It also might imply that there's some environmental hazards. We saw a train in the new game, or a subway station, and it seems as though there are instances where you can interact with the subway station. The subway station is also, the train is moving. The subway is moving as you are fighting in combat. So no doubt there are several improvements or big changes that were made in this game, everything is stagnant except for you and the enemies. There are no moving forces except for like maybe the late stages where like you deal with the crates, which are part of the puzzles. But in the trailer, there's a moving subway train, and it seems like there's some Mortal Kombat hazards at play where you can get to it, knock the enemy into the train, get like a little fatality sequence or like a stage interaction. So there's a lot more environmental play. Potentially you can knock people off cliffs, potentially knock them into the train tracks, who knows, but you can definitely wall splat. There's a new mechanic where you knock enemies back, and it seems like a very prioritized and focal point of the trailer. In the blog, they mentioned that attacks were seamless and they couldn't tell when it was cinematic or when the user was playing, and like you got like a significant hit or something, the camera just zoomed in on like Eevee doing a gut punch. You know, it zoomed in on her doing like a gut punch, and then it like slow mode. It's something I'm curious about because it seemed like you got those cinematics even when you're just doing like a regular hit in the trailer for the Stellar Blade 2. Like maybe some sort of counter hit system. Something is a play. Something is afoot. Here's a lore bit. They mentioned that Eevee is in some way, form, or another connected or related to Eve from this game. And my mindset is, what if that's not actually a new character? What if it's just Eve? What if that's just Eve? I mean, they are robots, right? They are robots, right? And it is like inspired by Ghost in the Shell and like Alita and probably some other shows. And exchanging bodies is like a common theme in those shows. Hell, Eve in this game changes bodies multiple times, right? And when she picks her costumes, all of her gears are technically her adding augments and shit. You know, it wouldn't be impossible if that would turn out to be the plot point or a plot twist. Oh yeah, the spot dodging. Yeah, the spot dodging, or rather the weaving. So Eevee in the new game is a boxer. She's doing a lot of bobbing and weaving. Also, enemies were doing multiple attacks against her. That she was just standing in place and, you know, bobbing and weaving. Which, as you can see, that's not a thing in this game. There's no spot dodging of any sort. There's no bobbing, no weaving. It's only perfect dodging. You can just do regular dodges, but regular dodges don't really work in this game. As you see, regular dodges don't really work. As good as the hit boxes and hurt boxes are in this game, they're very limited at the same time because the enemies track you so hard. They almost got like a 360 radius on you on each one of their moves. It kind of feels like you just perfect dodge or else. Right, I'm trying to just do regular dodges and avoid the attack. That's one of the sickest things in this game is doing the parry reversals, parry follow-ups. There's a new dodging animation in this game, new dodging system in a new game. Who knows what it's gonna be like? Oh yeah, the skill tree. There's a skill tree in this game. That means there might be a skill tree in a new game, right? You would think. You would think that there's gonna also be a new skill tree. That's exciting. If there's gonna be a new skill tree, I wonder how they're gonna do special moves. Are their special moves gonna be done the same way, or maybe they replace special moves with the stances? Maybe they replace burst meter with stances. Maybe you have the option to switch. What is R2 used for? What is R2 used for in this game? Is it used for anything? It's used to shoot when you got your gun out, but is it used for anything like outside of that? Because that could potentially be the stance button. Okay, R2 is interaction, ranged fire, pivot object, reel in. Okay, let me just say that interaction is unnecessary. It's unnecessary for interaction to be on R2. Interaction could be like up or down or like left or right. Like those buttons aren't used for anything. I always fight this fight because it's like cool. Woo! God damn it. It's a cool fight. This fight is funner than a lot of the bosses in the game. The new game, boxing, and the fact that you are without a weapon or without a long range weapon, I wonder what that implies for like, is there going to be more spacing involved in a Stellar Blade 2? Because in this game, there's not really any spacing involved in this game. Right, it's either you perfect dodge, you perfect parry, or you don't. Right, either you blitz your opponent down or you don't. Right, there's no spacing. Like there's no like, you know, that aspect of the fight is not really part of Stellar Blade 1. I wonder if the inclusion of spot dodging, bob and weaving, as well as having a shorter range weapon, as well as having potentially stances, as well as potentially having multiple weapons, potentially. I wonder if all of this plays a hand in how you approach just a basic encounter. Because your reach is shorter, do you have to get up closer to hit the enemy? Or is it going to be a situation where the game is going to kind of zip you in a little bit? Right? To try to make the game feel, you know, better for the player? Or are you going to have to live with your mistake where if you press an attack, you just whiff in front of the opponent's face? Right? How careful are you going to have to be? Right? And that would matter in regards to spacing. Like just the fact that you might whiff, you might misjudge how close you are to them would make spacing more valuable than it is in the first game. Because the first game, you have a pretty wide margin of error. One thing that would just completely blow me away is if they had grabs in the game. If they had it where you could just pick up the opponent and just like you suplex them or some shit, or like, you know, put them in like a you know, a clutch situation and start like kneeing them or punching them. You know, if some shit like that were in the game, man, that would blow me away. I wanted to fill this game out a little bit. You know, I re-downloaded it, you know, just so I could have this conversation. And yeah, wall splats throughout all of this that I just did, right, is very much a kind of a basic approach. Right? I get up to the enemy, hit them, either a perfect dodge or a perfect parry, you know, choose to attack and, you know, kill them. The new game has so many more layers to it. Without even playing it, it already has so many more layers to it because it involves the environment, right? I could have kicked that dog into the wall and then You know, maybe I could have gotten a follow-up combination after that, right? That would be something that matters for like, okay, well, spacing, when we were talking about spacing, that's another form of spacing where positioning is a part of spacing. So now I approach the battle, I might want to choose, okay, I'll approach it from this side. Right now, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter which way I approach the enemy. But in Stellar Blade 2, since you can wall splat, I would always prefer to approach this enemy perhaps from this side, right? And I would try to get them to this wall. I forgot that you needed meter to do special moves in this game. So I would just wait for him to get closer to the wall, go over here. Oh, yeah, I don't have the move. I would do something like that. But instead of just, you know, staggering him like that, it would have knocked him into the wall. And then while he's at the wall, you know, got him on the ropes. Okay, rip check, rip check, rip check, you know, and whatever else is in Eevee's repertoire. And that's how I would have dealt with him. You know, that's what I would have done. And I would do that for each and every single enemy. Right, that's just layer 1 from what we know. That's different. It's pretty cool. Anything that involves movement and positioning is part of movement, or rather, positioning encourages movement, which is another form of spacing. You know, if that is the game that we're going to be playing, then that may also mean that they are taking a look at movement and they're revamping how the character can move around, which will then improve the fun that is had and potentially having more options to choose from in the basic forms of combat. I want to do this move. I want to do that flip so bad in every fight, but it's just improbable. It's not a good idea to try to go for this. It's not a good idea to ever try to go for that, because the move is just not good. But if there are stances, maybe I could just go into stance and then immediately get that flip that I want to do. That would be pretty dope. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. Stellar Blade 2, Blood Rain. It's got the mind flowing with ideas. And we might get footage of it sooner than later, because they mentioned in that blog that there was a boss fight that, you know, they had, or maybe we might get like a gameplay reel of what that demo is or was sometime in the coming days, maybe, potentially, who knows. Hopefully we get a sample of that. They said that there was like praiseworthy and it looked better than a trailer, so I want to see that. But you know, maybe they'll bless us with some footage. When we were waiting for Stellar Blade 1, we got footage of Eve versus the I forget his name. You know, the lizard guy. Right, we got some early footage of that, and that was like the only combat footage that we had of Stellar Blade for like for like 2 years. Maybe it was like 3 years. That was the only footage that was out there up until like the last moment, the last 6 months where the game is getting ready to release. Then we started getting information. Maybe this is going to be our footage where we get a little snack of what's to come. And then they might go cold silent. Maybe they'll just sprinkle a little bit here and there every now and then. And we'll get like small updates like every couple of months or so and see how it's progressing. I imagine they will want to share the footage sooner than later because we still have an idea of what the game looks like right now in its very early stages. And so while it's fresh in our mind, we already have an idea what the game looks like. We'll have the earliest possible example. That's not trailer fluff. It's just pure gameplay. And then as the game progresses through its development, we'll be able to see how big of a glow up it actually gets. So that's why I think we're going to get some footage sooner than later. So we'll have some comparative footage. The game is a long ways away. They're going to make a crap ton of changes, crap ton of polish to the game. There's going to be so many changes, and stop looking at me, you freaking freak. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good one. The fact that it already looks so good this early on, and I think a lot of people's concerns, whatever they may be, I think it's going to get addressed. I think it's going to be fine-tuned. I think it's going to be polished. I think everything's going to be pretty darn good by the time that, the going gets going. So I'm looking forward to it. A good action game is always something that makes me smile. I will bid y'all further ado. I'm going to be outie. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your days, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side. May peace be with. Always keep your heads up. This is Those Both Ideals. Stay cool. And if you like this content, be sure to show some love, but always be sure to show that love to the people who matter to you. It's ITOwl bidding you farewell. Peace. Much love. Stay cool. Deuces. That door didn't explode when I wanted it to explode. There we go. Later.